Hello, this is Jen Roberts.
And this is Caitlin Toohey, and today we're exploring bias in the justice system.
Imagine being accused of a crime and preparing to go on trial. As nerve-wracking as that may be on its own, you start thinking of all the possible things that could go wrong that could lead to a verdict of guilty.
How will your attorney handle the case? How will the jury perceive you? What will the witnesses say about your case?
We aren't saying the whole system needs to change. We recognize that part of the reason the justice system works is because a trial by jury gives ordinary citizens a chance to be involved and make a difference, which is something people take very seriously.
Generally, one would hope that a group of 12 people would be able to even out the biases that may be present in a few of the jurors. However, there is research to support the idea that the opposite is true.
There are many flaws in the justice system based on human error that make the current trial by jury system unfair.
One of the problems with our justice system is that people enter cases with prejudgments and personal biases that sway their ability to make objective opinions. We see this in real-life court cases where media coverage affects outcome, and we also see it reflected in the media itself.
The documentary Making a Murderer is about a man once acquitted after DNA proved him not guilty of rape, only to be arrested on murder charges a year after he got out of prison. In the documentary, one of the jury members says a couple of his fellow jury members seemed to have their minds set on finding Stephen Avery guilty even before the trial began.
The Avery family had a history of crime, and the media portrayed Stephen as guilty even before the trial began. The reputation and media portrayal of the family led to few jurors' biases. This shows that the juries can have preconceived bias that can make the justice system unfair.
Bias plays a role not only in juries, but potentially in those investigating and prosecuting crimes. Sometimes police officers or prosecuting attorneys can have biases that affect how they see potential suspects. Mike Lukovich published a political cartoon in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution commenting on this potential bias's effect. In the cartoon, a doctor is saying, "I'm sorry your son has a potentially deadly case of skin color."
The kid in the cartoon is black, which demonstrates how people hold bias based on skin color. The cartoon uses hyperbole to point out the fact that black young men are more likely to be arrested than any other group in the U.S. and, further, are reacting to the deaths of several black men while being arrested that have made headlines in recent years. These biases often play a role in court cases, whether in public opinion or opinion of those on the side of the prosecution, and make it hard for a trial to be completely fair.
Bias certainly plays a potentially huge role in creating unfair circumstances for trials, but beyond that, the people directly involved in the trials may have alternative motives corrupting the process of seeking justice.
A staff editorial for the Washington Times titled "Reforming Criminal Justice" argues that prosecutors are usually judged not for how they serve justice, but on how many men and women they put away.
Further, there is financial incentive to incarcerate more prisons with the rise of private prisons. In fact, according to a New York Times article, a judge was recently convicted after it was discovered that he took more than $2.6 million in kickbacks to send teenagers to two privately run youth detention centers run by PA Childcare and a sister company, Western Pennsylvania Childcare.
If prosecutors are rewarded for getting people convicted than actually serving justice, they have motives to win cases solely to help their own careers, with disregard to those on trial. And while the judge was ultimately caught and punished for taking bribes to send youth to prison, the system we have is flawed and susceptible to such abuses, which are more difficult to prove. The justice system clearly has flaws which make it unfair.
We see further evidence in the play 12 Angry Men, where the members of the jury call the eyewitness testimony of the old man into question.
The jurors argued that the only reason the old man testified to seeing the kid flee the crime scene was because he wanted to have his 5 minutes of fame and feel important. This shows how eyewitness testimony can sometimes be flawed, leading to wrongful convictions.
There are many flaws in the justice system that lead to unfair trials and verdicts. Due to the existence of bias and alternative motives of those involved in trials, it can be very hard to be given a fair trial. It's important that we as a society are aware of the flaws in the justice system so that they can be addressed and one day fixed.